Welcome to the Rex Andrews Show. Glad to have you on the program with us today. If you are a first-time listener, welcome. Glad to have you on the conversation and listening in. We ask you to do a couple things as a first-time listener. Of course, number one, don't forget to subscribe and mark us as a favorite so that you can get all the latest and greatest updates of the episodes. Number two, we ask you, and I'm not afraid to beg. In fact, I have a caller on today, so I'm a well-dressed beggar. Ask you to give us the best stars. If you think we're doing a good job, give us 5 stars. It helps us in the placement in the apps that carry the podcast. Then the last thing we ask you to do is stop by the show website. And the reason why I recommend that, stop by rexandrewshow.com because we interview these great people, but we only touch the surface of all the things they're doing in most cases. You can't bring somebody in who's an expert and expect to do everything in one sitting. So on the show website, we have profiles, links to their businesses, their social media, those types of things. And so if you want to follow up and get in contact with them, easy way to do that. Not only will we give out their links, but do that on the show website. And then, of course, we have all the upcoming guests and all our previous guests in case you've missed people or want to have on the schedule. So stop by. Now, we want to thank those who are listening in again. It's awesome to have you on the program. We've been really blessed. We are listened to in 32 countries, over 500 cities on 6 continents. Now, if I could figure out how to market to penguins, but more importantly, probably help them recharge their cell phones, we'd probably have some listeners in Antarctica. So thank you for tuning in. And then the one little thing that we do each day when we enter into a show, we want to recognize listeners in different corners of the world. So I would like to welcome those listeners who've been dialing in and listening in from Cocoa Beach, Florida. So welcome, Cocoa Beach. If you haven't been there, hop on down to Cocoa Beach and go visit Ron John's and some of the other interesting things in the area. All right, so that's enough of the house cleaning. Glad to have you with us today. We've got a great guest today. And, rarely do I have a guest that's a toad. Most of the time it's pretty interesting people doing great things. And this is another one of this. And this topic is right up my alley. As someone who's been an athlete and had athletes in the family and been around those circles. So I'm really excited to have him on the show today. So I'm going to introduce a few things about him I think you're going to find very interesting. He's an award-winning PGA teacher and instructor. Okay, so he's well known in the golf circles. He's an award-winning coach, performance coach. Okay. He's a 2-time two-sport professional athlete. He actually played professional golf and soccer. So you don't see that's an interesting combination. I would get golf and maybe hockey because those swings are very similar, but golf and soccer. He's a speaker, an author, and he's also created some amazing online courses to help deliver the things that he helps people with. So he's a great asset, and I'm excited to talk to him about his topics today. So welcome to the show, Geoff Greig. Geoff, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Fantastic. Now, the show is a biography show, and we do talk about the things you're doing today, but we try to dig in. Success doesn't fall out of the sky. So we're going to go back in time and ask a lot of questions about things. Now, you don't have to worry about writing these down because I'll blast you with all these questions, but a few of them along the way. We want to know where you were born. Okay. And then where were you raised? Because that's often different and can be impactful on a person. I had a guest on the show, Ellie Soja, who actually moved 63 times before the age of 15. She was the daughter of an international con man and in and out of refugee camps and all kinds of things. Big influence on her life.
Those must have been some great stories.
All her stories are amazing. Absolutely amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then we want to know about what you focused on as a kid. Now, I know you're an athlete. Okay. So we want to know sports, interests, computers, drama, shoplifting. I actually had a guest on the show, Larry Cole, by the age of 15, was a car thief. So, if you're focusing on stealing cars, well, then you have a different perspective on the world. We want to know about your family growing up, because that's always impactful. If you have if you have siblings, and if you have siblings that then did they survive your harassment? We also want to know about your parents, because parents' influence is huge. Now, in the hundreds of interviews I've done over the time in radio and on podcasting, I've kind of found three buckets that I throw parents into a little bit. Now it varies, but the general three buckets are: one is the what I call the launch pad parents, total supported, totally engaged, pushing their kids to grow on and do great things. Then there's sort of the middle bucket, which I call the non-participatory parents. They love their kids. They wanted to support them and did the best they could, but they were so busy eking out a living that they really couldn't do everything. Like my dad was one of those types of guys. He was a highway patrolman. His schedule was crazy. He rarely got to my sports games. So that's an influence. And then the last one is what I call the struggle bucket, which is the one I don't like, but it does motivate and create people to rise to greatness. This can be environments where there was addiction, abuse, extreme poverty, all the moving around like Ellie. I mean, there's just all these things. And so that's an environment for parental influence where the kids are like, wow, I don't want to be anything like that. So they work hard to be not that. Then we want to hopscotch around your career and education and stuff like that and pivot points. And then dang, we are going to jump into all this, what you're teaching about as far as mental acuity and being able to help people refine their skills on the mental side. So let's go back to the beginning. Geoff, where were you born?
Providence, Rhode Island. At a hospital called the Lying Inn.
Oh my goodness.
I wouldn't remember it if it wasn't such a unique name.
Yeah, no kidding. I only known mine just because it wasn't far from our house. So, okay, that's great. Now, do you have siblings?
I have one sister. Yep.
Okay. And now age difference between you?
She's 3.5 years younger than me.
Okay. So you were big brother. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a good relationship with your sister growing up?
I was always the sensitive kid, and she was always the kid who kind of just winged it and didn't care. So she really knew how to get under my skin very, very well. So as kids, there was a lot of friction between us. But once we got I would say once I got into college and she got into college, the relationship really kind of flip-flopped, and now we're very, very close. She's a mom. She has 5 kids. She's an absolutely awesome mom. But once those teenage years got out of the way, we've had a great relationship ever since.
Fantastic. All right. So what did you spend your time on? I'm guessing it's going to be something around sports. What was your when you weren't in school, what were you doing?
Yeah, it's I grew up in a small town in Vermont. My dad was a teacher and a coach at the University of Vermont. Mm-hmm. And so I was always around sports, and as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be a professional athlete. But it was also, I used to love to hop on my bicycle and go fishing. I was love to get up early in the morning and go catch a couple of small trout and have those for breakfast. So it was kind of an interesting balance between, I liked being by myself in nature, but I also loved the competitiveness of sports. And I always felt like that was really what I wanted to put my energy into, was being an athlete and being a really good athlete.
Fantastic. Tell us a little about your parents.
So again, Dad was he was a teacher and a coach at the University of Vermont. Okay. His specialty as far as teaching goes was he was a psychology of coaching and motor learning guy. So he was into similar things to what I'm doing now. So, okay. But his big passion was coaching. And so he coached a number of different teams at the University of Vermont. He was one of the coaches for the ski team. He was one of the coaches for the hockey team. He grew up in Canada, and he was a hockey player and a tennis player. Okay. But the memory that's strongest for me was he actually started the soccer program at the University of Vermont, and was very successful with it. And that was what kind of pulled me into soccer, because whenever I could, I used to go up, and I was the little kid running around kicking balls at Dad's soccer practice with all the college guys. So I always saw myself wanting to be as good as those guys or better than those guys. And there was definitely good. It gave me motivation. It gave me goals, because I saw how much fun those guys were having and how hard they worked. But it was also tough because Dad was never there. He was recruiting people. He was traveling with the team. And so that made it a challenge. And, like you mentioned, your dad was a a highway patrolman and wasn't able to go to many year games. Well, my mom went to almost all of mine, but my dad never could because he was so busy coaching
other kids.
Yeah. So there was always the big admiration for Dad and what he did and how he did it. And his players just absolutely loved him. But it was also a little bit frustrating because I wasn't getting much of that coaching. And as a kid, that's tough, when you're a little boy and you want to have your dad helping you out and moving you along.
So when he started the soccer program, was that in like the mid to late 70s, early 80s?
No, that was in the mid 60s. He actually started two soccer programs. He started the soccer program at Hartwick, which turned into a national power. And then he started the soccer program at the University of Vermont. Yeah.
Because I remember, I graduated high school in 83. And at that time, there weren't that many fully funded D1 soccer programs because I played soccer all growing up as a kid. So a good percentage of the soccer programs were still club sports.
Yeah.
And I was looking for money to go to school. I wanted, get some money to play whatever I was doing. So I hopped on over to football and was able to use my, what we call the fullback back in those days, leg, and, kick some football. So I was just a little curious about when did they start the program? When did he start?
And that was actually one of the big issues for him going forward is he started it with very little money and no scholarships.
Yeah.
And within a couple of years, they were winning what was called the Yankee Conference back then. It was Connecticut, Massachusetts. It was all the big state schools up in the Northeast. And those were all fully funded D1 programs with scholarships. And so after about 10 years of running the program, he went to the athletic director and said, hey, listen, I've taken it this far, but we're really bumping up against the wall. We're playing teams day in and day out that have scholarships. And I need some kind of financial help in order to be able to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the University of Vermont, whether it was a money thing or whatever it was, they said no. So he resigned as the soccer coach and started coaching the tennis team because there was no pressure. Unfortunately, he resigned from coaching the soccer team 3 years before I got there. So never got to have him as a coach.
Well, that's good and bad. I coached my sons in football and soccer. And there's some interesting dynamics because, as your dad, I was a little rougher on them because I had higher expectations, but, it worked out. They had stellar careers. So, but yeah, that's a different dynamic. Okay. So were you a good student?
I was the kid that they always said had a lot of potential, but didn't work hard enough to live up to the potential. Yeah,
I get that. I was bored with school, bored to tears.
Yeah, for me, it was, I either wanted to be hopping on my bike and going fishing, or I wanted to be going to play soccer or play tennis or do something. It was very hard for me to motivate myself to do the homework that was necessary to be a really good student. I didn't get bad grades, but I never did live up to my potential. The teachers were absolutely accurate in that.
I can remember I had hustled through a lot of my classes, and in my senior year, I had 4 gym classes out of 6. And the kids around me used to joke. They would say, he's all gym, like all state, but I would like all gym because I literally, this was back in the day where you had to wear a gym suit, to gym classes. I didn't change. I went to all my classes in a gym suit. So my senior year of high school, I lived in a gym shirt and shorts, and regardless of the weather. So
that was a predictor of your business success, because if you can get 4 gym classes scheduled, you're going to figure out how to make yourself a success in business later on in life.
Well, the biggest thing was I was trying to have a coast easy senior year. So I still had a math class and then student council. So I was barely in high school. I mean, math, student council, and 4 gym classes. And so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, actually, I did a similar thing. My senior year, I had done enough work and accumulated enough credits so that I got accepted to the University of Vermont. But I actually only went to school at my high school half a day, and then the other half a day I went part-time to a ski racing academy.
Oh, nice.
So that was my other big ski racing and soccer were my 2 big passions in high school. So it was the folks at the ski racing academy, which was at Mad River Glen back in Vermont, were kind enough to let me come down and do that. And it was a great experience. I really loved it.
Now, when did you pick up golf?
Not till I was 25.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Golf's such a great game. You can pick it up at any age.
Yeah,
It's
it
fun.
was. It was all. I had a bunch of friends in high school that were all golfers, and they were always, "Oh yeah, come play golf. It's really fun." It just my energy level was too high. I couldn't calm down enough. But after I retired from playing pro soccer when I was 25 and went back to finish college, I got invited to go play. And I just played that one time and I just got totally hooked. And looking back, I think it's because my whole career in soccer was based on what do the coaches think of me. So it was always somebody else's opinion of you.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily how many goals you scored, how fast you were, how skillful you were. It's what did the coach think about you and were they willing to put you into the game? Whereas when I got on the golf course, it was just me and the golf ball. And that was super powerfully attractive to me, that it was just me and the golf ball and the golf course. I definitely think that that's why I got so addicted to it at that point.
Yeah, that's true. It's an interesting dynamic because, as you know, all sports have a huge mental part of it. We're going to talk about that, but golf is a big one. It is really a big one.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
that's
Jack
for sure.
Nicklaus's favorite quote is 90% of golf is 100% mental.
That's right. That's a great one. I have to remember that. That's a great one.
Yeah, almost all of the great golfers have some kind of a mental quote. You know, Trevino said it's 90%, but once you get to a certain level in golf, it's true in any sport, but even more so in golf, the mental game becomes so important because the skills are so high in all of those players.
Sure.
It just becomes your ability to access those skills that makes the difference.
Now, where did you go to university? Did you?
I went to the University of Vermont.
Okay.
So I got offers from Hartwick and from Connecticut, which are two big soccer schools. But
Yep.
unfortunately, or fortunately, however it worked out, because my dad was a teacher at the University of Vermont, I could go free. So
Oh, that's nice.
that made a big difference. Yeah.
That's like a built-in scholarship. That's wonderful.
Yep. And it was at that time, it was a very good soccer program. We went to the NCAAs 2 times. So the fact that it was free and the fact that it was a powerful soccer program, that was good. And of course, it wasn't that far to go home and get a free meal from mom either.
Yeah, that's nice. So what position did you play in soccer?
I was an attacking center midfielder.
Okay.
So in soccer terms, they call it the number 10, is the guy who plays just behind the striker who tries to open up the defenses.
Yep. Yeah, we had a lot of fun in coaching youth soccer. I coached all my kids. And in fact, my youth and high school combined coaching, I coached over 400 games.
Dang.
And we just learned a couple different plays in soccer.
Do you get retirement pay for that?
No, not at all. I get to wear my own trophy around my own head for that one. That's about it. I mean, and we won. It was an enormous amount of games. It was enormous. We rarely lost. But in soccer, we just had a couple plays. And, again, the striker opening up the center, popping it back to your midfielder. And we would just pass it around. And little kid soccer, they would know that kind of stuff. And so, and soccer is a great sport because if you have 2 or 3 really good athletes, it's all you need. You can hide kids. You can hide kids completely. So in fact, one of my oldest sons, he had a buddy that came and played on the team, and he was miserable. He was a horrible player, and I was always having to find places to hide Ethan. But then he got huge in high school and was a great offensive lineman. So it was funny. But yeah, love the sport. All right. So when you got out of school, what was you were doing? You were being a professional athlete.
I actually
Tell us a little
left school early.
Okay.
I played 3 seasons and had some good success, got some awards and things like that. But I just felt like I knew at that point that my goal was to play professional soccer. And I just felt like because the college soccer program was limited as to how many games you could play in a year and the types of people you played against, my dad had some connections. And so I actually, after the season in my junior year in the fall, I left to basically just go train with West Ham United over in London.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're in the Premier League now, and at that time it was called the First Division. But basically, I just went over to train with them for the rest of the season. And it was interesting for a kid from a town of 5,000 in Vermont to go to London and not know where I was going to live and not know anybody there. But it ended up being one of the coolest and most powerful experiences of my life. But the bottom line was that after about a month, they said, well, listen, we'd love to have you stay for the rest of the year. And so I ended up playing some games with the youth team and then the reserve team. And the guys that were on that team that I got to train against that were on the first team were some of the best players in the world. So it was a really amazing learning experience. Yep.
Wow. So how long did you play professional soccer or play at that level?
5 years.
5 years. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had enough credits. So I came back after playing with West Ham and did my one more season at the University of Vermont. And then I left and played in the ASL, the NASL, and the old MISL. Yep.
Okay. Wow. All right. So you retired from playing soccer. Is that when you morphed over to trying to get onto the PGA? Or tell us a little bit about that.
Well, basically what happened was that at that time, pro soccer was, I loved doing it, but the contracts weren't guaranteed. The money wasn't very good.
No.
And I actually, 2 of the teams that I played for folded. And that was what precipitated me saying, you know what, it's really difficult. Like if it had been different in Europe, I would have gone back to Europe and played in Europe, like in France or in Holland, something like that, which you can do now, but it was too difficult to get a visa to work back then. Mm-hmm. So I just decided that, you know what, it's time to go back to school, finish my degree. And so I assistant coached the soccer team while I was finishing up getting my degree at the University of Vermont. And that's when I fell in love with golf. And I finished up school, did the assistant coaching for a little while, did some other jobs, but I was just so hooked on golf that it was about 5.5 years later, I played in my first US Open qualifying and started looking at playing on the mini tours.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, you got to look at it this way, at least I would. There's a lot less running in golf.
I actually, that was one of my strengths was I was very quick and I could cut, I had a lot of endurance. So I enjoyed that part. Yeah.
Right. Well, you know, a lot of people look at soccer and say, that's just a good excuse to run for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Run around and chase a ball for 90 minutes. Yeah, no, it's incredible. You know, soccer players, especially at the professional level, they have some of the lowest heartbeat rates because they're in such great shape. I mean,
yes,
because it's not only just, I mean, it's a lot of sprinting, you know, you're going to be jogging around and stuff, but
it's basically 7 to 8 miles of 20 to 30 yard sprints for the position that I played. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic. So, how long did you play in golf then as a professional?
I played 3 years on the mini tours. Okay. So I played 1 year on the Golden State Tour in California. And then I came back and played 1 year on the North Atlantic Tour in New England. And then I went back and played another year on the Golden State Tour in California. And that's when my back blew out, which ended my playing career. Yep.
Okay. Now, I know you like to ski. Were you skiing during all this time too, or?
That was the big challenge, was all of my soccer contracts had it written in that I could not ski. So I went from like my first year at UVM, I played soccer in the fall and then I ski raced on the ski team during the winter and spring. So I actually did a 2-sport while I was there, but that was the last skiing I really got to do for almost 8 or 9 years because of contracts and just being so obsessed with the golf side of it. I fell back in love with skiing after I recovered from the back injury, which is, it's interesting how things pan out like that. Basically what happened was a very good friend of mine that I grew up with, that we used to ski together in high school. He was working for IBM and he went to work in Geneva, Switzerland. And he said, hey, come on over for a visit. And we went and skied Chamonix, which is one of the most mind-blowing ski areas in the world. It has 3 times the vertical of areas in Colorado. And it's just you can ski places where if you make a mistake, you're not going to live. And that one trip of 2 weeks skiing at Chamonix, and I just got completely addicted to skiing all over again.
I'm noticing a trend here. I hear this word addicted. So addicted to soccer, addicted to golf, addicted to skiing. So it looks like you're a guy that was all in on a regular basis.
Yeah, I tend to run very hot on the passion side. Absolutely.
Oh, I can get with that. Okay, so now you're doing some really interesting things. How did you get into coaching? Where did that start?
Well, initially started way when I was in college. We were always trying to figure out during the summer, in between seasons of college, what do you do for money? Well, our college coach had soccer camps, so he would pay us to go work at his soccer camp. So that was where it really first started, just working with kids, teaching them soccer during the summer, and it was fun, and it sure beat working at Kinney Drugs and department stores and things like that, which are other things that I'd done. But then when I stopped playing pro soccer, I went back and assistant coached soccer again. So that was just another little bit of an experience. But the teaching really started when my back blew out and I knew I wasn't going to be able to play golf professionally anymore. So I had to figure out, what am I going to do for a living for the rest of my life? And I just, rather than working in the pro shop at the golf course, which didn't appeal to me at all, I was not a sweater folder. I just decided that I would start trying to help other people play golf a little bit better. So that was about 1993 when I started doing a lot of teaching, and then I became a PGA Class A in 1996.
Wow. So I was going to ask you along the way, when you were playing professional soccer, were you making enough money to live?
And really just the last contract that I had was what I would call a reasonable contract. The first 2 or 3 contracts it was enough to get by, but no, not really. It was a completely different situation back then.
Yeah. And people don't realize, when you're playing in the second tier leagues and those types of things, there's really no money in those, things as far as that. And then also too, there's a lot of big misconception. If you look at NFL contracts, those rookie contracts, unless you're like a first or second round player, you're not making that huge of dollars, huge compared to a lot of people, but they're not making the millions and millions and stuff. And that's why you see a lot of kids, make it to that 5th year and then finally get paid because, that, and a lot of them don't make it to that 5th year. So it's a business and they churn and burn a lot of players.
Yeah. The NASL, which is the league that I played in, was the equivalent of today's MISL. It was the top league in the US.
Yep.
And I played for the San Diego Sockers, which was, we made it to the semifinals of the league championships. But nowadays, the average US players are probably making $70,000 a year, something like that. And this was back in the late 70s, early 80s. So you can imagine what the salaries were like back then.
Oh,
relative. Yeah.
Yeah. You might be able to make more money working at Pizza Hut.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So fantastic. How long did it take you to be a certified coach in the golf?
The PGA process took about 2 years.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So you start off as an apprentice and you have to do a certain amount of hours as an apprentice, and you go through this whole process with the PGA and in order to become a certified Class A PGA professional. But becoming a PGA Class A professional is very different from actually becoming a really good teacher. The PGA certification, people think, oh, you're a PGA pro, that means you play golf on TV for a living. Well, that's actually a whole separate classification.
Yeah.
The PGA is designed to try to grow the game of golf. And there are some people that specialize in the business side. There are some people that specialize in the marketing side. And there are some people that specialize in the teaching side. And when you specialize in the teaching side, it's really more self-driven than anything else. How much research do you want to do and how good do you want to try to get? There are now some good programs where you can turn into a master teaching professional and you can take it further, but it hasn't always been that way. So a lot of it was just, are you doing it because there were a lot of teachers back then who were doing it because they liked playing the local section tournaments. They loved playing, so they taught because it allowed them to play. And then there were others that were just in it to try to help other people get better. And because I knew I couldn't play anymore, I kind of got shifted into all right, let's see how good I can get at helping other people get better.
Fantastic. So let's pop up to what you do today. How did you get into all of the training and focus around the mental side of the game?
There's a couple sides to that. One side is that my dad was a psychology of coaching and motor learning guy. So
wow.
I was always hearing him talking about psychology with his college athletes and learning processes with his college athletes. So, it didn't resonate with me at the time, but I'm sure it had to have some effect hearing him talk about those things so much over the dinner table. And when I did get to go to practice, or when I did get to follow his team or whatever. But then there was also my careers in both soccer and golf. I always felt like I underachieved, that I was given more physical talent than I was able to access. I can remember very clearly one particular college or soccer coach that I had when I was playing pro indoors in Hartford going, "You are unbelievable one day and you're an idiot the next day." And he had no idea how to fix it, and I had no idea how to fix it. So that was a little tiny seed, and that just kind of grew over the years. And then when I started teaching golf is when it really started evolving, because I started noticing that my clients or my students would be very different from day to day, and they didn't know why they were very different from day to day. And at that same time, when I was learning how to teach, I was also learning and studying Tai Chi to heal my back from the back surgery.
Okay.
And that little synchrony between those two of understanding the mental side from Tai Chi, because Tai Chi is big into body awareness, breathing awareness, moving energy. It's very, very much it's a mental, physical art, if you will.
Right.
And I started applying some of the things that I was learning from my Tai Chi teacher to my golf students, and it was really powerful. And that's really what was that was kind of the tinder for the flame, if you will.
Okay. Now, you've put together some courses for this, right? First of all, I forgot to do this a little earlier, but we'll do it now. How do people get in touch with you? Because we have a lot of people who play along, so they'll, take a look at websites and stuff like that. So how do people get in touch with you? Websites, social media, whatever.
Yep. My main website is real simple to remember. It's just ggzap.com.
GGCAP. That's great.
Yep. So Geoff Greig Zone Athletic Performance, ggzap.com. Okay. And then on Facebook, it's just my name, Geoff Greig. Same thing on LinkedIn. And I always love to have people interact. I do regular posts of all the mental game stuff on both Facebook and LinkedIn. So people can get some free tidbits, some free help, some free tools on both of those social medias. Yeah.
Fantastic. Now, when you're working with people today, I understand you kind of have a self-paced course and then you have individualized training. Tell us a little bit about all that.
Sure. Well, what I've found with mental game training is that it's still in the early stages of people's level of comfort with the idea of mental game training. People are very comfortable with the idea that, okay, I need to get physically fitter, or I need to improve my skills. But the mental game is still kind of thought of as a gray area. It's still kind of, in some ways, misunderstood, but mostly it's just not that much is known about, well, how do I train the mental game? How do I get better at the mental game? So what I've decided to do was offer some introductory steps that people can take so they can get a taste for my take on how to improve your mental game so that you can play better and have more fun in the sport that you love. And that allows them to kind of get some knowledge before they dive in and decide to do a full online course or do a mentoring program with me. So before you want to jump in and fully get into it and just go crazy, it's nice to kind of touch your toe in the water and see if you like the temperature and see if you like what it feels like.
Okay. Now, there's some misconceptions on mental game training. What do you see out there today?
There's two big ones. And one of them is that when you go to talk to people, they automatically assume that if you're saying that they need to do some mental game work, that there's something wrong with them, that it's a mental illness, as opposed to, so when you look at trying to get better to play basketball, you might think about getting more cardio health or more vertical leap, or so that's the physical fitness side of a sport. And then there's the skills fitness side of a sport. So like a golfer, making their swing more repeatable and on all the angles are more correct. Well, there's also mental fitness, and there's definitely a lot of misconceptions about that. When you mention the term mental fitness to people, they think that you're implying that there's something wrong with them. And it's more that we're trying to improve some basic dynamics, because what the sports science tells us is that no matter how good your physical skills are, and no matter how good your sports skills are, you can't access them if you don't have the right level of mental fitness. So the mental is what actually triggers your skills and your physical fitness when you perform.
Okay. Now, when you're looking at the science of this, I think there's a lot of misconceptions, because, back in the day, I'm bipolar, and I study this science all the time. Neuroscience is something I spend a lot of time studying, because I think it's a fascinating field. I think it's the biggest frontier in medicine. But there was a lot of misconception years ago that your brain was the way it was and you can't rewire synapses and things like that. Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's dispel some of those myths, because there's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big buzzwords out there now is neuroplasticity. There's a whole bunch of different companies founded on that, and basically what they've found in brain research is that you can completely rewire how the electricity moves from your brain to your body in relatively short period of time if you know how to do it correctly. Mm-hmm. And you can, so you can go in, once you understand the core concepts of how to make changes inside your brain. There's not a lot of things that can't be retrained. Now, there are certain patterns, and there are certain electrical and chemical patterns that are much tougher to change than others. But some of the basic little patterns, like how your brain gets you to do a certain movement pattern, or how you react to certain emotional patterns, those things can be changed very quickly. And that's a big part of what I do with athletes, is just teach them how to make changes quicker by understanding how the electricity and the chemistry in the brain work.
Fantastic. So when you work with a client, is there a particular period of time that you set out? Is it a few days, weeks, months, year? I mean, I know people are going to have different needs, because I believe, and I believe this to be an absolute truth, brain chemistry is as unique as your fingerprints. And so when someone comes to you, they're going to have all kinds of different needs. But is there a typical length of an engagement for you?
I try as much as I can to tailor what I do with somebody to their goals and their needs. Mm-hmm. So if somebody just wants to get introduced to mental game training, then we can help them see a difference in 3 or 4 weeks. So wow. I do some month-long programs just to help them. One of the core concepts of performing better is you have to be able to recognize the difference between when you're focused and when you're distracted. Right. Because what happens with the brainwave electricity and the brainwave chemistry and your physiology is completely different sides of the fence when you're focused and when you're distracted. So if I have a series of exercises that people can do at home, and then I show them how to apply that to their particular sport training. And within 3 or 4 weeks, they can see a difference to that. And sometimes for people, that's enough. They just want to be able to recognize that little difference, and they're more on the DIY side. In general, I like to do 3-month programs, because that gives us enough time to get through the full core foundation for making a big difference for what they're doing going forward. So the basic metrics are focus and emotional management and self-assessments and learning how to make changes quicker, and then applying it to training, and then applying it to your performing. So when I work with folks, those 6 metrics, if we can do a couple of weeks for each metric, it's hugely, hugely powerful. Now, I have some athletes who are doing 6-month programs. I have some athletes who are doing year-long programs. I rarely like to do them less than a month, because the reality is they're just not going to see enough of a change for them to feel like they're not just going to slip back to where they were before.
Now, does this translate off the athletic field and into business or other areas of life? I mean, it would seem like it makes sense to me.
That's actually, yeah, thank you for throwing me that softball. I love when people mention
That's
that.
right. Yeah, I can throw you softballs all day if you want. And
I
trust me, if you're listening out there today, I don't take anybody's questions. I have people email me questions. These are things you should ask me, and I don't even look at them because I want to have a conversation. So let's take this softball and run with it.
I worked with a number of young ski racers last winter, and it was so fun and so gratifying because at the end of the year, not only did the ski racers say, wow, that it was much easier for me to deal with the emotions that I've been struggling with, or I could focus a lot better on the second run than I could before. So, that kind of stuff is super gratifying. But when I have the moms and dads come up to me at the end of the season and say, you know what, her grades got better. And she was talking with her younger brother about some of the things they were doing, and the younger brother is now paying attention better. So absolutely, things do translate. When you can focus better and you can learn to manage emotions better, that carries through into, whether it's kids doing better in school or parents doing better in business. Yeah, the basic metrics of the mental game for sport translate 100% into really whatever venue you want to take it to.
Well, that makes a lot of sense because reprogramming like this, I know lots of people in business who are so scattered sometimes. And for those who are not watching on YouTube, I just raised my hand. And because of the ability to be distracted, not being as effective, right? And I just drives me crazy. Now I know, just watching my own brain chemistry and function, there are certain days or certain times of the day I better not be doing anything that takes any brain or focus because I'm not there. I'm not there. Now, there are times in the day I can power out several hours worth of things and be there, but it has to do with being able to focus and get rid of those distractions.
Yeah. So that's probably one of the most core things that I do with all athletes is give them different exercises. And I have this whole data bank of exercises that help people to focus better.
Okay.
And the reason why I need a data bank of them is some people love some and hate others. So part of my job is to be able to read people well enough to know that this person is going to do really good with this seated breathing exercise. Right. And this person over here needs this moving mindfulness exercise. But the core principle of all of them is the same. Can you recognize the difference between when you're focused and when you're distracted, and how long can you maintain that ability to be present, and how strong can you make it relative to the distractions that are coming at you?
Okay. Now, I understand that we were talking off air before getting on here today. You have a free sampling to kind of get people to understand what you're doing so they can decide if they want to make a decision. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So the main course that I offer is designed, it's 6 2-week modules. So it's designed to be a 3-month course. Now, you don't have to take it consecutively. Like I have a lot of people who just do one of the 2-week modules and then they go off and they do their thing for a month and they don't. So it may take some people a year to do the whole course, but it's really about what's of value to you. Do you need to find stronger focus, or do you need to be able to manage emotions better? So each of the modules is designed to be kind of a self-isolated module, so you can use it as you see fit. But before jumping into a course like that, I thought it would be smart if I took the first and most kind of elemental module, which is the focus module, and make it into a free 2-week program that people can try on their own, so they can test and see if they like it, see if they can apply it. So fantastic. I have a specific one for golfers because I do a lot of work with golfers because that's my background, but I have a generic one for athletes in general. And they're 14-day challenges that are divided into home study and for your training. So the home study part is doing mindfulness exercises, breathing exercises, meditative exercises. So it's like going to the gym for your brain. Yeah. And then the training side of it is, okay, well, how do you take these new things that you've learned and how do you apply that to your sport? So they do the core of helping you do something at home. And by the way, they're not super time intensive. They're about 5 to 10 minutes per day is the way
Wow.
it's designed to work. So it doesn't take a lot. It really So those two, so I call them 14-day challenges, and they're essentially the first module of the full course. So it's a great introduction to the course, but I like to offer it for free so people can kind of figure out, well, is this something I like? Is this something that's going to help me? Do I want to do more of it?
Yeah. Do you want to invest in it?
Yep.
Fantastic. I love your approach. It's just awesome. So what's next on the horizon, Geoff?
Couple things actually. I am also, so one of the things that I've found working with athletes, as long as I have and as many sports as I have, is that the meditative side of strengthening your focus is challenging for high energy athletes. So
Okay.
sitting down, even if it's 10 minutes a day, sitting down and doing a breathing exercise can be really challenging for some people, especially since this day and age, and there's all kinds of amazing and kind of scary research about what our screen time with cell phones and laptops does to us.
It's horrible.
So, you know, a big part of what I do is actually just trying to get people from being so distracted from their daily life of phones and laptops, just back to the baseline before we even start improving it. But what I'm working on is taking Tai Chi and creating a side niche called Sport Tai Chi. So what it is it's meditation in movement designed for athletes.
Cool.
So Tai Chi in itself is a meditative movement. It's basically like yoga with movement.
Right.
But so what I'm creating is I'm taking and I've been studying Tai Chi since 1991. I'm taking my knowledge of Tai Chi and applying that. So when you're learning the movements, when you're learning the breathing of Tai Chi, when you're learning the energy movement of Tai Chi, you're also figuring out, well, how can I apply that to golf? How can I apply that to skiing? How can I apply that to basketball? So I'm kind of going back and forth whether I'm going to call it Sport Tai Chi or Zap Tai Chi. But basically, it's going to be another way to introduce mindfulness training to athletes, especially ones that struggle with seated meditation or seated breathing exercises.
You know, let's see. It's been about 4.5, 5 years ago. One of the best self-improvement classes I ever took, I took a 6-week mindfulness class. And talk about wonderful. I mean, stress reduction, clarity, those types of things. Now, have I put it to practice as much as I should? Oh, no, that's not always the case. But I can look back and all my care and emotional and behavioral care, best thing I ever did.
Yeah.
And I really think a lot of people need to slow down and do that. And you really hit a nail out there. I saw something, and this may be the wrong statistic. You probably have more data on this, but I think the average person looks at their phone 150 times a day.
Yeah, I mean, the scary one, I was doing some research with the director of the ski academy I was working with last year, and kids from 12 to 17 were averaging 6 to 6.5 hours of screen time per day.
Yeah.
And after a year of that, they're going to have an average focus time of about 3 seconds, unless you're giving them some type of training so that they can extend that again.
I know that those numbers are true. This must be 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago that I started where we're looking at this as far as attention. They were talking about, kids in school, the fact that they are having 6.5 hours on their phones. Okay. Now they're in school another 6 hours a day. Well, when did they eat? And stuff? And then, I have a giant TV in my basement, but do the kids want to watch anything on the giant TV? No, it's all on their phones. And you'd go into the room at night and their phone would be laying on the floor or in their hand or on their bed, because that's the last thing they were doing. And it's the first thing they do when they get up. Yeah. So if you take 6 hours of school, then you have another 6 hours on your device. Well, you don't have many more hours left in the day to be doing things. So it's scary, the impact. And I worry about my kids. I recently, a year ago, became a grandfather.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And I just worry about this generation and his generation about what's the impact. Because the other thing, too, that a lot of people don't understand is the rewiring of your brain with that, the dopamine and
Yeah.
the
Yeah, it's
blue light. It's
really
scary stuff.
dangerous chemically because you get these little endorphin spikes every time you get a message or something
Yep.
good happens on the phone.
Yeah.
But the long-term effect of the screen is that it increases dopamine levels,
Yep.
which is stress levels. So
Yep.
you're going back and forth between endorphin spikes and dopamine. So you're going back and forth between all these different chemicals that are potentially going to cause you to really struggle to be able to maintain the level of focus you need for certain tasks.
Yeah. No, it's a different world. And I think I made a mistake. I got my kids' cell phones for my benefit.
Sorry, I should, not dopamine, cortisol. So you go back and forth. So dopamine and endorphins are the high level. Those are the highs that they get from getting messages from their friends and talking with their friends. Cortisol is the stress hormone that happens when you watch the screen for too long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember when my kids were young, they were in sports, and I got them phones for my benefit because when they were in 5th or 6th grade, it was about the years we got, gave kids phones, but it was because I wanted to be able to hunt them down at a practice somewhere or connect with them to let them know I'm running 10 minutes late to pick you up.
Yeah.
Don't get in someone else's car and go home. I'm on my way. So it was primarily for my benefit. But now I look and see with all the science and stuff, that wasn't a very smart move. It really wasn't as a parent. So,
well, the reality is we're not going to stem that tide because essentially it is almost an addiction for them.
Yep.
So all we can do is try to give them something that they can do on a daily basis for a short period of time that'll at least get them back to the baseline, right? So, and especially for kids, it's really tough because their energy levels are so high. Seated meditation is tough. So that's a big part of the reason why the sport Tai Chi or the Zap Tai Chi has become such a big part of what I'm looking forward to kind of introducing to my current clients and spreading a little bit more. And one of the when people think of Tai Chi, they think of this very slow movement for old people, but the base principles of Tai Chi can be done at a very high speed, and they can be done at when you're very, very low. So I am actually going to use it to help athletes increase speed and strength. So when you're doing the sport Tai Chi, there's going to be a version where you're going to be doing the whole form really, really low, which really opens up your core and your center. And then you're going to do the same movements, but you're going to do them at a very high speed and try to keep the effort level down. So it's not just that one slow movement, because that would be very tough for kids and tough for a lot of adults who have the high energy type of syndrome. So what I'm really trying to do with sport Tai Chi or Zap Tai Chi is give people an option to increase their mindfulness, that they can adapt to their sport, but they can also do fast or do it to strengthen themselves as well. So it's kind of a little trifecta of mindfulness exercises.
That's fantastic. Well, I'm definitely going to have you back on the show when you've got the sport Tai Chi or whatever you're going to name this out, and we can talk about that in depth, because that's just fascinating stuff. And now, as I've been listening to you, we've been having this conversation. I go back to probably one of the guys that I met in business. Gosh, it's been at least 25 years ago. He was one of the most connected as far as self-awareness and observation, and just a measured guy, very, very successful. He was kind of a geeky looking guy and stuff, and I'm sure he's still with us, but he was way into Tai Chi. And boy, had he mastered that science. And, he was so grounded. And he just had a calmness to him.
Yeah.
And he was very witty, and he didn't say very much, but when he did say something, you wanted to listen because he was very succinct and accurate. So it's been great to have you on today, Greg. Great to meet you.
Yeah, it's been fun.
I love this stuff, and we're going to have you back. You can count on that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I'm curious, as a marketing guy, do you like sport Tai Chi better or Zap Tai Chi? Oh, I put you on the spot there.
I would probably go to the Zap Tai Chi because it might be more. It would make the audience wider. sport Tai Chi is going to put you into, in my opinion, put you
Yeah.
into a box where you're going to just work with athletes. But as someone who's spent 34 years in tech, worked around all kinds of super type A people and people that need focus in these things. Well, I can see an entire executive or manager or even an individual contributor who could be taking this and applying it to their careers, because boy, it's so easy to get out of bounds and not have that focus. So
Yeah, one of the most rewarding speaking engagements I did was for a group of veterans.
okay.
Now, they were actually veteran golfers, but all the talk about brain waves and just recognizing the difference in how brain waves trigger the chemistry, which triggers your body. The amount of people that came up to me after that talk, it was awesome. I had a warm fuzzy for a week after that.
Yeah, that's great. No, I if I had a vote in it, Geoff, I would say Zap, because I think it's needed in so many disciplines. And I know lots of business people out there who high performers, really, really smart, but they get so distracted. They get so distracted from time to time that they're not as effective as they really could be.
And Zap also sneaks in my business name.
Well, exactly there. So, all right. Well, at least that's my contribution to the conversation today. Well, thank you for coming on, Geoff. It's been awesome. Glad to have you. Glad to have you dialing in from Salt Lake today. The Uinta Mountains there is one of my favorite places in the world, just because of the access is so quick out of the Salt Lake area. That's one of the downsides of living here on the Front Range in Colorado. Yeah, there's plenty of mountains here, and there's 54 14ers, but we're a little bit limited to how to get to those places. So
yeah,
fantastic. All right, well, I got one last question for you that I ask all of my guests, and this is the left-handed question. In the Western world, we have this concept called a bucket list. Okay, now I actually have interviewed and met the bucket list guy. His name is
that's cool.
Trav Bell. And his whole mantra is about living a purposeful life. So episode number 60, if you ever get a chance to listen to that, he's a hoot, great guy, very, very gregarious Australian down in Melbourne. But anyway, bucket list, things we want to do before our time is done. But then, as you know, everything in the world, there's an opposite, right? So there's a list of things we don't want to do or have no interest in doing. Now, that list rhymes with bucket and starts with an F, but this is a family show, so we won't say that, but there's an F-it list. So what I'd like you to pull out of the old noggin there is what might be a thing or two that's on your F-it list. Now, I will give you a couple samples from my world. My world would be, I am not going to have a collection of pet snakes. No interest in that. I'm not going to do any cliff rock climbing type, stuff. Being tied to a rope and being able for me to depend on my life existence, not going to do that. I'm just too risky. I how to make payroll and things like that. And then I'm never, ever going to do a Lakota Sioux sweat lodge again. The idea of excessive heat, excessive humidity, excessive drumming and chanting, and a small slice of nudity, I have no interest in doing that again. So what might be an item or two, Geoff, that's on your bucket list?
Well, I would have to say the first one would be living in a city, especially if it's warm, that is not within really close distance of great skiing.
Okay.
I'm a small town guy, and I love big mountains. So cities, the energy in cities is different than the energy in small towns.
Yep.
And I like the energy in small towns, and skiing is my big passion, especially big mountain powder skiing. So being in a city is definitely on that F list.
Yep. Okay. Anything else that comes to mind?
Well, I mean, it's kind of related to the living part of it, but one of my least favorite places that I've ever visited was Florida. So I never want to go to Florida again.
I had a 2-year stint in Florida. I'll agree with you that, the whole concept of wearing the air, I just don't like that at all.
Well, it's flat. It's got tons of bugs. And for you with the snakes down there too, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, there are not a whole lot of redeeming qualities in my mind from Florida. I mean, people love it, but it wasn't me. Plus, the other thing I realized about Florida if you're along the coast, there's really nice and it's developed and there's a lot of modern things and stuff like that. But you go inland a little bit, oh my goodness, it's a dump.
Yeah.
The roads are terrible. There's just an interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if it was the East Coast, maybe because I could do a little bit of surfing, but the West Coast or inland, I'm with you. No thanks.
No thanks at all. Well, if you like powder, you're not far for some of my favorite powder. Alta is heaven on earth. So that's one of the great places. But anyway, well, thank you for coming on. We will get you back. Throw out your website one more time so people can find you.
It's ggzap.com.
Fantastic. Okay, folks, we're going to call this an episode for today. We want to thank Greg for taking the time to come on and share his story. Fascinating topic. Love it. We will get him back, and we're going to, well, I will be telling everybody about Geoff and what he's doing, because I'm going to be one of the first persons that's checking out his free stuff, and I might be one of his next clients. So until next time, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening and being part of the show. Please stop by the show website, rexandrewshow.com. Catch up on all of our guests, past, future, and present. And until next time, we'll say the three things that we always say. Be safe, but be bold, and make it a great day.